A crazy weekend for the Detroit Tigers. It's the final weekend of spring training that has now come to a close. There's been some roster decisions. We have a set rotation, and we have a late addition to the opening day roster in the form of a major league signing. We'll talk about all of that and more all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, March 24th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Happy Monday. Welcome in. We got to hit the ground running. No break. No long pause today. We're jumping right back into it because we have so much to discuss. It was a heck of a weekend. And now, like later in the week, when there's a longer pause there, then it'll feel even more special. I think really this weekend was about decision making and about adding Manuel Margot. Like that is those are the two biggest storylines to come out of the weekend. That was there is a starting rotation that is set. We know that 5 players that are in the rotation. There's some bullpen decisions that still have to be made, and obviously there's some offensive decisions that have to be made. But Margot will now be included in those decisions as well, making them possibly even tougher. We will discuss all of that. I want to start off with Margot because I think that is probably the most pressing issue. Issue? Not the right word. The most pressing story to come out of the weekend. The Tigers sign Manuel Margot to a 1-year major league deal to play, presumably, center field for your Detroit Tigers. I have a lot of thoughts on this. My initial reaction is I have no issue with it. It's very expendable. If he doesn't perform very well, or if Parker Meadows comes back and you have to then shrink your bench and you don't know who to get rid of, if Margot's not hitting very well and is like the 9 hitting platoon against lefties, then like you can just kind of cut him or DFA him or whatever and not really lose any there's no financial obligation to like make sure he spends all year on the team. It's a pretty cheap deal, even though it is a major league contract. This is obviously all coming at the heels of the update with Parker Meadows. We'll go a little bit more in depth on that later. But the Tigers want a little bit more assurance in center field, and based on what is available, right? You're not going to bring in like an MVP candidate to go play center field on March 24th, March 23rd, whatever. It's not going to happen. So of the players available, they thought that this was one of the better fits. I really don't mind it because it is so low risk. If it doesn't work out, then it's who's the wiser? You just count your losses and go in a different direction. The profile, I also think, is an interesting fit with the Tigers roster. Margot does not hit right-handed pitching very well. He is a righty bat. He does, however, hit decently against lefties. He's never going to be a plus hitter. He's never going to be, no matter who is on the mound, like one of the best hitters in your lineup. However, throughout his entire career, he has hit lefties pretty well. And last year, even though the stats are, I think he was a negative 0.2 F4 player in 2024. That wasn't because he hit lefties poorly. He was around league average in hitting left-handed pitching. He used to be back in San Diego for sure, maybe even a little bit in the corner outfield as he got older and eventually ended up in Minnesota. That's how a lot of Tigers fans know him. He was a pretty darn good, like borderline premier defensive outfielder at one point in his career. Now, again, he's 30. This is probably 5-6 years ago now I'm talking about. But at one point was one of the top 100 prospects in baseball. He was very highly regarded at one point in his career. But B, he was roaming center field and was a big time plus defender there. That's not really him anymore. You're not going to get Gold Glove defense out of Margot in center, but he has a lot of innings in center field, which is more than pretty much anybody on the Tigers roster can say. Like a little bit Riley Green for sure, but as we've talked about a lot on this show, and as a lot of people are already well aware, the Tigers are not going to put Riley Green as an everyday center fielder. They have reiterated this spring what they initially said 2 springs ago and again last spring, which was we want to get Riley, we want to protect and preserve Riley Green as much as the organization possibly can. And that in one of the ways to do that is for him to play corner outfield, which, by the way, he is better at anyway. He is a legitimately last year put up like borderline Gold Glove caliber defensive metrics in left field, whereas in center field, he was around a net zero defender. He's not going to win any crazy awards out there in center field. So this team is at its best when you have, Parker Meadows in center and Riley Green in left, but Parker's not going to be here for a while. So I think that the addition of someone who has experience in center field, has played really solid center field before, even if he's not a positive center fielder anymore, is not like a huge negative center fielder either. He's going to be serviceable out there. He's going to be around a net zero defender up the middle for you, which is fine. He was a non-roster invite for the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee Bucks? Sorry, I was a guest on a Pirates show, and I was thinking Bucks, and then I was also watching the Pistons and I guess Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Brewers, rather. He was a non-roster invite, goodness, for that organization, was not going to make the team, became a free agent. Now he is in Detroit. So again, 1 year major league deal, hits lefties, fine in center field these days, does not hit righties very well. Not a guy that with a slightly negative WAR season that he put up last year that you want to necessarily be your everyday center fielder for 162 games, which brings us to the roster impact. There is a ton of conversations floating about what this means for the opening day roster. Okay. I want to talk all about that and break down all the angles that this could create going into opening day, which is this week. The Detroit Tigers play regular season baseball this week. Happy Monday, everybody. We'll talk about that and so much more right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at Just Ingredients. When it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. And that's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers an NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all religiously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients has also partnered with two-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF-certified sports line to fuel his training and recovery. I love Just Ingredients and how much it prioritizes wholesome, nourishing ingredients without all of the artificial junk. Really fascinating to get my box of stuff in the mail from them, and my roommate and I just to read the back and just go through the ingredients, and we're kind of blown away by the quality. It also fuels performance, whether you're recovering after a workout or need an energy boost. Their grass-fed whey protein and pre-workout delivers real results. Visit justingredients.us and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all one word, for 20% off. And for more wellness tips, you can follow at just.ingredients on Instagram. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back tomorrow, recapping the second to last spring training game. Eyes on Thursday's opening day as we start to preview the season. Opening day, we always do our full season preview episodes. You can expect that later in the week as well. So talking about the impact that this Manuel Margot signing has on the Tigers roster, he was signed to a 1-year major league contract on Sunday. It's really fascinating, to be honest with you. I think he is going to be on the opening day roster for starters. Again, major league deal. Immediately, to me, my reaction was, okay, well, this means that it truly is Torkelson or Malloy. And I guess like Jahmai Jones is in that conversation too, but I think that hype train is kind of slowed down from the beginning of the spring, and I would be pretty surprised if he was in there. But technically speaking, I would say he's in there too. No longer Ryan Kreidler. We'll talk about that later. So that is kind of my immediate reaction, that it's going to be Torkelson or Malloy, and that in center field, it's going to be a platoon of Wenceel Perez and Manuel Margot. Perez, as we have talked about a lot this spring training and even dating back to the winter, is a switch hitter, but did not hit left-handed pitching very well, if really at all, last season. Like OPS in the 500s, batting average barely over 200 against lefties last year. And on top of that, also has next to no like legitimate long-standing center field experience as a professional. Margot doesn't hit righties very well, which Wenceel Perez did pretty decently a season ago, and is at worst a little bit more serviceable in center field defensively. He can be a late game defensive replacement as well, right? Like if you want Perez's bat in there and there's a righty on the mound, but then late in the game, you don't think you're going to get to Perez again, or you have like a 3-run cushion and you want to prioritize defense, you can go to a guy who has a little bit more experience in center field there instead of Perez. Now, that's not to say Perez, I think, is going to be an awful defensive center fielder. He made a really nice play this weekend. I think he's shown strides. I think that the organization is at least confident enough for him to be a semi-platoon option. However, if they were truly fully confident in him just being the center fielder until Parker Meadows came back, then they wouldn't have signed Manuel Margot. So as we always say, like the organization is going to tell you kind of how they feel about a player. And I think that in this case, while I don't think this is like slander against Wenceel Perez, I think they wanted a little bit more assurance at that position still. Now, the other angle here is, what if it's just straight up not even Wenceel Perez? What if he hasn't done enough in the spring to even earn an opening day roster spot? Which I think is a fascinating question to ask here. His spring stats are not very good whatsoever. If Perez was to go down, then it's almost a guarantee that the team would do Margot in center and then also carry Malloy and Torkelson, with then Wenceel Perez and possibly Jahmai Jones in AAA. We're gonna find out here by the end of the week if Jahmai Jones has, a clause in his contract where he gets to become a free agent if he doesn't make the major league roster, or if this is something that the Tigers organization can maybe convince him to stay in the organization and go down to AAA. Well, we're going to find all of that out in the next, 48 or 72 hours here. But he would hopefully stay in the organization because he seems like a pretty good depth outfielder to have internally. So like which of those ends up being the case? I really think it's a toss-up. If I had to bet right now at 6:05 p.m. on Sunday, March 23rd, I would say that they're going to carry Margot and Perez. And wow, it's really almost exactly 50-50 between Tork and Malloy. Part of me thinks Torkelson, just because he has hit so well, and they've tried to put him in the outfield, although I don't think that that's going to be a very common occurrence in the regular season. Malloy gives you a little bit more versatility, but isn't a great defender anyway, so how much does that really matter? All conversations we've had a lot. I think if I had to pick right now, I would probably say it's Perez, Margot, and Torkelson. Man, I almost want to change that to Malloy. Truly 50-50. Not really the point. Don't need to spend all episode just sitting here staring off into space guessing what they're going to do, when we're going to find out in the next day or two anyway. But if If I had to bet, I would say at a minimum they're carrying Perez and Margot, and I think that the platoon nature of that is why they made this move to give them more confidence at the center field position and more center field depth that they were lacking, right? And to me, if Perez doesn't make the team, you're just swapping one center fielder with another center fielder. In other words, you are going from one center fielder on the entire roster because, again, we talked about they're not going to play Riley Green consistently there, to, drum roll please, one center fielder on the opening day roster. I don't think it would be ridiculous or stupid. I mean, Malloy and Torque have hit so well. I completely would understand if the organization was like, these two guys have to be on the opening day roster, and this gives us a little bit more confidence to do that. I would totally understand. But I really do think if I had to choose which way I think they go, it's giving them more depth and more options and more flexibility, I guess is the word I'm looking for, at that center field position. But Perez isn't going to be saved in this conversation by his defense, right? Like he's I don't think he's going to be, garbage out there, bad, but they're not going to go, you know what, Perez needs to make the team because he's going to be a really good defensive center fielder. So he needs to hit, and he hasn't in the spring. Now he missed, a week and a half, 2 weeks due to an injury. So part of that could just be him getting back into the full swing of things, no pun intended. But like, if the organization isn't confident at Perez's offensive ability or what Wencio Perez can produce at the plate, and they think, you know what, we need offense, we need to prioritize offense, and we can go out and get a guy who we know, even if the production isn't great, can at least play center field every day, then maybe that's the direction they go. It just doesn't give AJ a lot of flexibility when it comes to his late game, pinch hitting style management to move a lot of pieces around and to really put anybody besides Margot or Riley Green for a couple of innings in center field. But right now, and this is really what it comes down to for me, they have two guys that can play center in Perez and Margot. One hits righties, one hits lefties, and the other two options, being Malloy and Torkelson for that last bench spot, are both pretty positionless. So that is kind of why I'm leaning towards this Perez Margot platoon and one of the two of Torkelson and Malloy. But again, no decision would really shock me, and all of those guys will have plenty of at-bats at the major league level. I think we all, myself included, kind of overreact to opening day rosters every year, as I've said a lot of times already this spring. And all of this conversation is at, again, as I said at the start of the show, the heels of a Parker Meadows injury update where he is definitely not coming back in the next month. You can pretty much erase any return before May 1st. And even if he is back at the end of April and like cleared to play, I should say, at the end of April, he's going to have to then go on a rehab assignment, get ramped back up in the minor leagues. I mean, there's a chance that like the earliest we see this dude at this point is like middle or even late May. And that might, again, be the earliest. Like, this blows. This absolutely sucks. I hate everything about the fact that Parker Meadows is not going to be ready on opening day. And it's no longer just like, oh, like we'll just see when he's ready to go. Like, he's gonna miss time and like legitimate time. And that's something that this organization clearly came to terms with over the weekend, which is why they went out and got Margot. So hopefully he can return sooner rather than later. Hope, if he is back by mid-May, then so be it. And like, that's not the end of the world. They'll have a couple of other people coming back. Hopefully, Veerling, Cobb maybe can improve your pitching depth a little bit as well, even though the rotation is pretty great. We'll talk about that in a second. But ultimately, I think that this is just, again, increasing your confidence that you can, at least at worst, limp to Parker Meadows' return in center field without having center field look like a complete catastrophe. And I think they're trying to raise the floor a little bit. Let's talk about the rotation, okay? It was officially set over the weekend. Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Reese Olson, Casey Mize, and Jackson Jobe, just as we talked about and predicted at the end of last week. We'll talk about that and all the moving pieces around that as well right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who is cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs as the first weekend is officially over here. There's still some dogs left. There's still some great basketball being played, and FanDuel makes it easy to back those underdogs with spreads, totals, and game props. With the tournament games happening almost every day and almost all day every day currently, there's always something to bet on and to be excited about. And on top of all that, the FanDuel app is just easy to use. So when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, everybody, welcome back. Your third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So we're talking about the starting rotation for your Detroit Tigers this year. As I said before the break, Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Reese Olson, Casey Mize, and Jackson Jobe. I think that will probably be the order as well. The reason why is it just gives them a little bit more flexibility with managing Jobe's innings. If they want to skip a start for him one time through the rotation because they get a couple of days off in a week maybe, or if you just get to some point in July and he's already, pushing 100 innings by the end of July, then you can manage that a little bit better there in the second half of the season. Just gives you that kind of flexibility and confidence, especially when Alex Cobb comes back. If Montero looks good in AAA, they're going to have the starting pitching depth to accommodate for whatever injuries arise or whatever they want to do just in terms of limiting Jobe's innings in his first full major league season. The odd man out here is Kader Montero. I guess also Kenta Maeda. We could talk about that a little bit. Officially announced that he will have a role in the bullpen on opening day as a long reliever. We've been talking about that for a while, and I'm actually excited about this. There's a lot of people that are were upset that he even made the team. Like I get it because of what last year looked like. He was a lot better in the bullpen for starters, like significantly better in the pen for the Tigers a year ago. And on top of that, this spring, he is striking out a ton, like one of the highest strikeout rates in all of baseball in spring training. And on top of that, one of the lowest walk rates in all of baseball in spring training. I think that, he's not going to be the closer, but I think that there is a role and a legitimate opportunity for him to be a valuable piece of this bullpen where he can kind of be that swing man that Tyler Alexander was for so long, where, okay, the starting pitcher only goes, 4 innings, inefficient outing, gets popped a little bit, whatever. Okay, we're going to send Maeda out there and hope that he can give us one full time through the lineup and give us, 2 to 3 innings, 2 1/3, 2 2/3 innings. And so I think that is something that this team needs and wants. And I think that Maeda can do that. Now, Montero not making the rotation, I saw some people that were talking online about, we like Montero more than Maeda, and he's better than Maeda, so he should get the spot in the bullpen over Maeda. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago on the show. It is a lot easier said than done to just go from being a reliever and then just be like, hey, go out there and throw 100 pitches in 6 innings today. Right? Like that is a lot easier said than done. That is not just something you can roll out of bed and do if your arm isn't prepared and ready for that. So I have zero issue with this. I love Kader Montero. I certainly trust him in a start far more than I trust Kenta Maeda. I really liked what I saw from Kader Montero this spring as well, but there's 5 spots and I like the 5 guys they chose more than Montero, at least in, March of 2025. But this is the solution. This is why they want Montero to be a starting pitcher. And if you want Montero to be a starting pitcher as well, then we are all on the same team and in support of him going down to AAA so that he can develop as a starting pitcher and not develop as a reliever. I know it's not quite literally, necessarily the best arms available in the bullpen if you think that Montero is better than Mize right now, but like this is how development works, and this is what needs to happen so that when inevitably, because again, there, as I have said a billion times this spring, there is a 0% chance that these 5 guys are the only starting pitchers this year. We've used like 15 plus starting pitchers for 3 years in a row now. Okay, you're gonna need a lot of hands on deck to get through a season as starting to all hands on deck to get through your starting rotation all year. So Montero will start plenty of games. In order for him to be ready to start any of those games, this is kind of what just needed to happen. So I have no issue with that. It gives him a chance to develop and work on his command a little bit as well. I think Mize deserves the heck out of it. I think Job does too. The things that I'm going to be looking out for early is Mize going to look like he did in the spring in the regular season? Like that is the $1 million question, because last year we saw Matt Manning look a lot better in spring training, and then the regular season came around, he got demoted and he struggled in AAA. We saw Mize look improved last year in spring training. He didn't have a bad year by any stretch, but it wasn't fantastic either. And so I think we're all just like, I am ready to get hurt again. I am very, very prepared to kind of buy into the Casey Mize stock right now. And if it bites me, it bites me. But I completely agree with the decision for him to be the SP4. And I completely agree with Job to be SP5. The only thing with Job is just getting consistent swings and misses. And that's been something that has kind of been a thorn in his side since reaching the majors at the end of last season. He's added some new pitches. He hasn't had a super high whiff rate and swing and miss potential in spring either. But the stuff is just so blatantly great that I'm really not worried about him developing that. And I want him, this is the most important thing for me, I want him to develop with Chris Fetter and Robin Lund and Juan Nieves. I want him to develop with the Tigers pitching coaching tree and lineage that has been so successful over the years. That is who I want him working with on a daily basis. And so I think that is the best course of action for his development. At some point, you got to rip the Band-Aid off and just go, you know what, your stuff's really good. You got to develop a little bit and learn. This is how you learn. You go out there and you pitch every 5 days against major league hitters. Like I said, Montero will pitch plenty of Major League Baseball this year. So will Kenta Maeda. The only decisions remaining are bullpen decisions and a few offensive decisions, as we talked about earlier. I'm interested in how the bullpen kind of shapes out. That Andrew Chafin decision is kind of ever looming. Other notable performances from the weekend. Justin Henry Malloy and Max Clark have a collision in left center field on Sunday. Terrifying. Both of them completely fine and 100%. Thank goodness. Kevin McGonigal with a nuke on Sunday. Always cool to see. Jahmai Jones with a home run as well. And a really good start to spring and then kind of cooled off. And now, making that decision tougher, I guess, in theory, as we get close to the end of spring training here. Ryan Kreidler sent to AAA this weekend as well, so he will not be on the Tigers Major League roster or playing center field, and obviously that's why they go out and get Manuel Margot as well. I have no issue with that, and I'm hoping that Kreidler can just hit a little bit more because he can be a valuable super utility type player, but we're going to need to see a lot more offense out of him for that to be the case. Other things to kind of watch out for is there's always a big wave of players on waivers right before opening day, because if you are out of minor league options and the team wants to send you to the minors, then you have to clear waivers. So we'll see if the Tigers partake in that. They don't have anyone really pressing unless like Zach McKinstry or a couple others don't make the team. They don't have anybody that's really looming in terms of will have to go on waivers, but there's always a huge wave of that right before opening day. That's how we got Zach McKinstry actually a couple of seasons ago. So we'll see if there's any, moves around the league or in the Tigers organization when that day comes around. The only other thing I really got is just like Malloy and Torque continue to look really good at the plate. There was an at-bat on Sunday with Torkelson where he got 3 straight sliders low in the zone, took one, swung and didn't get a hold of one. And then the third one in a row, I was like, you can't just keep throwing him that. And he drilled it down the left field line for a double. Beautiful piece of hitting. Probably not something he would see in the regular season, with more competitive pitching. But either way, just really good to see him make those adjustments mid at bat. And we'll see, man. We'll see. This roster conversation is going to be fascinating. To put a bow on that, one of the reasons why there is some roster puzzling that has to be done is because Torres is going to play second. And so far, there's no indication that he's going to move off of second. And Keith is going to play first. And he doesn't have the arm to play third anymore. And he's not going to play second. So he's going to play first. And, the bat has been solid this spring in terms of putting the ball in play and making contact and hitting the ball hard. But he's still not lifting the baseball. He's hitting over 300 in the spring, but his OPS is in the 700s. Like, he's still not driving the ball into the gap or over the fence. And so I am very curious at what the leash is for that first base situation. At one point, if Torkelson's hitting especially, at what point do you pull the plug on this Colt Keith at first base, Torres at second base thing, and you try to either convince Glaber to go to third or you find a different role for Colt Keith because he's not going to play third anymore. I really don't think the arm is just there anymore since his injury in the minors a couple of years ago. So we'll see. But he had a couple of solid at-bats again this weekend, singles, putting the ball in play, and then had a couple of nice plays defensively at first base as well. I'm not too worried about him long-term being a defensive first baseman. He's athletic enough to do it. So we play Major League Baseball. Well, not you and I, unfortunately. Maybe you're a player listening. But the Detroit Tigers play at Major League Baseball this week. I cannot wait. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back tomorrow as we start previewing this season and putting a bow on spring training. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll talk to y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.